I have located a planetary ring with no asteroids inside it, and it's the best thing ever. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Elite Dangerous with Down to Earth Astronomy. So I was making my way towards Colonia, and on my travels I came across this little neat system. And in this system there is a, as you can see here, a water world with a ring around it. And I thought, you know what? That could make some pretty screenshots. So I decided to fly a little closer to have a look. And here we have it. A water world at least, but with absolutely no rings in sight. And at first I thought, well, that is odd. It showed up clearly on the map. So first indication here, of course, you can see I have already scanned it, the ring that actually is there. You can see the hotspots here. But the first thing I did was I mapped the planet, and when I got the surface scanner out, I could also see, when positioning this in just the right position, there it was. Oh, it's very, very thin. But in just the right position, there is in fact a ring. It is very, very thin, but it is there. So I mapped it, and I decided, okay, let's try to drop into it, and let's see what this is all about. So I found one of the hotspots that you can see here, and let's try to drop in. Let's see what happens. So here we are inside the ring, or well, the lacking of a ring. And you can clearly see here, I'm just over a kilometer away from the hotspot. You can see that I am mass locked. And if you look very carefully out here, you can actually see all the small dust particle fragments that are flying around here. Now, none of these are, of course, targetable or mineable. These are just like the small, like, volumetric thing that flies around to give a little bit more atmosphere to the ring, indicating that the ring did actually load. Yet, when we take a look around, there's nothing here. There's no rocks at all. Now, at first I found this little odd. I was considering, is this a bug or what's going on here? But then I realized that what I had accidentally stumbled upon was the answer to a question I've been asking myself for quite a while, and something that I wanted to test. And that is if the density of a ring has an impact on the number of core deposits that spawn in a ring. Now, if you know about slip mining, we saw with slip mining that asteroids or core deposits are generated separately from normal asteroids. So those two generation methods are clearly not the same. They'll be done separately. And therefore I couldn't be sure if the ring density had anything to do with the number of core deposits that are being spawned. Now, if you think about the implementation of this is actually quite important. Because if the number of core deposits is a constant, regardless of whether you go into an area with few rocks and a low density, where they're spaced out a lot more than if you go into an area where they're more tightly packed. Now, if the number of core deposit spawns are the same, in that case you should always try to go into the lowest density areas that you possibly could, because then there would be a higher number of core deposits to other asteroids, and you would also have a longer line of sight. So you could survey a larger area, you could survey a larger number of core deposits at the same time. You would on average have more core deposits in your field of view. Well, if the number of core deposits then scales with the ring density, then the answer is a little bit more difficult, as we'll see in a bit. But what I realized was that this place right here answered that question. And it tells me, this is pretty much as definitive of a proof that I could come up with, that this that number of core deposits in fact does scale with the ring density. So what does that mean when it comes to mining, and especially selecting your mining spot? We already discussed that it definitely doesn't mean that you should go into the lowest density area, unless you have an extremely fast ship, because if you go into a low density area, the average distance between core deposits will be longer. And that means travel time become a important factor here. So unless you have a blisteringly fast ship, you should try to stay away from the lowest density areas. Now, you probably shouldn't go into the highest density areas either, unless you're in a very slow ship, because if you're in a high density area, you don't have a large field of view. You can kind of imagine if all the rocks were packed in very tightly, you would only be able to see the rocks, let's say, in a kilometer radius around you, and then your field of view will be completely obscured by the rocks. And that means you won't be able to see many rocks at the same time. But if the rocks were more spread out, then you could see a larger number of rocks, because you would have a longer average mean viewing distance before you would hit a rock. And that means you can survey a larger number of rocks, and you have easier time finding the core deposits. So the correct answer to where you should mine probably lies somewhere in the middle. If you're on a fast ship, you can go in a slightly lower density area because then travel time doesn't hurt you as much. But if you are in a slower ship that doesn't have as much straight line speed, then you should probably try to go for the slightly heavier or slightly tighter packed area where you don't have to travel as far, but you might also have a harder time spotting the asteroids. So it's kind of a balancing thing that you have to try and learn for yourself, what suits your playstyle and the ship that you're flying. Now, I must admit that I never actually thought I would be so excited to see an empty ring, but I actually found this extremely interesting because it once again gives us a little sneak peek into how the whole game mechanic work and how asteroids are generated, and it helps us optimize mining so we can become better and faster and more efficient at it, making more money per hour. Now, if you found this video useful or just interesting as well, then please go down and hit the subscribe button. I have a lot more mining content on the channel. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, and also next time, I will see you guys in space.